Okay, hello everyone. Happy Wednesday. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll be able to impart some just ideas, well, things to think about, and certainly consider me a resource if you have any questions afterwards or want to reach out. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And okay, can you see it?
Yes.
All right. So what we want to talk about is just really connecting. Ultimately, it's about connecting. And so I have this little process that I'll talk to you about, and I call it plugging in the power cord. And so before we get started, just a little information about my company. So we do consulting and staffing in accounting and finance, IT, and HR. And we've been around for a while, and offices in Irvine and in San Francisco. So we do work up and down California, and as well as nationally. We also host, and I'll share this with you up front, and I can certainly share more information with you, but we host an executive in transition boot camp, and it's a free program. It's facilitated by me and an executive coach, and it's really about networking more effectively, getting out of your own way, whether that's with thoughts or actions, and helping you to focus on, the stories that you share when you're interviewing or talking with people, and then just really stepping into your most empowered self on demand. We hold it twice a month, one for Southern California and then Northern California and nationally. And it's three-hour sessions, and the dates for December are there. November we're already booked, but if you're interested, if you know of somebody that's interested, we really focus targeted on director level and above, and it's industry agnostic as well as discipline agnostic. So it ends up being a really good forum for executives. So today, what I want you to take away is really three things. One is just an awareness of how you could be showing up and how you might be perceived, and how to switch that up if it's not working for you. And then I mentioned the step-by-step method to create an instant connection. And so I'll take you through that, and you'll probably get a couple of chuckles from it. So be prepared. And then to really focus on another way to get assistance from others. And I call it planting seeds. So rather than, out and out asking for help, but really planting seeds. But first we're going to get started on energy. So you all have heard sayings like, I'm not feeling the vibe, or there's, just something that feels off, right? Have you heard that before? Mm-hmm. When you think about that, and there's so many studies now that talk about this more and more, that it's your energy is palpable. And I believe that your energy can even radiate over a Zoom meeting or over the phone. And what I believe is that your energy impacts so much, whether it's emails, resume, voice, no matter what, your energy impacts how you speak, how you write, how you feel, and how people feel about you. And there's also the thought that energetic authenticity is something that I believe is important. And so much so that, you can't fake being happy to meet somebody. You can try, but ultimately people will understand that. And there's ways to really control and shift your energy. And I believe the energy of others. So if we take a look at this slide, and if you look at this is called the scale of energy vibrations. And the whole thought is the higher the frequency, the more positive the label that's put on that is more of a positive energy. The lower the frequency, it's more negative. And when you look at the bottom, it's like shame is below depression and feeling guilty and apathy and all of that. And so a good practice is to really try to gauge your energy. There's so many studies, there's books, there's this book called The Field that I was really fascinated by. And one thing that it talks about is how your energy vibrates and can even send messages to other people when you're not, necessarily thinking that it does. And so when we think about our energy, what we want is to tap into that authentic energy. Meaning, if you're going to have an interaction with somebody, what you want is to get your energy in check first. And when you do that, and say you want to focus on, more of a higher frequency, you really want to take steps to get in that, whether it's using music, whether it's just, getting your energy level up, just, movement, smiling is a way of increasing, getting to a higher frequency. And so when you think about this, it's really important to make sure that your energy is in check, because whether or not we want to believe it, it actually is, it does impact how people interact with us. So when we think about connection and opportunities, whether it's interviewing, talking to potential clients, because I know, some of you are consultants, or even interacting with our family members or friends, the important thing to think about is that we have to do things intentionally. And the more we do it intentionally and thoughtfully, the easier it is to repeat it, even, without really thinking about it. What I have is, like, these are really 5 ways to make a good connection. And I believe it starts with desire. Many of you have heard of the book, The Go-Giver by Bob Burg and John David Mann. And if you haven't, it's a book that I really recommend reading. This is actually a book that someone gave me. So the story is, I started my company right before the economy fell apart. So that Great Recession, right before that is when I started my company. And as you can imagine, my timing was impeccable. And I was having one of those, oh my gosh moments. What in the world did I step into? And what I knew is that I completely believed that there was business to be had, but I had to be creative about getting it. And what I also knew is that to get business, I had to be able to connect with people and not come from a place of fear. And then I knew the whole, like, innate law of reciprocity where you do things for others and then others will want to do things for you. And, I learned that growing up. My grandmothers, just influenced me greatly, always said, Christi, do good things for other people and I'll always come back to you. And so, but what I knew is that, you have to, it starts with a desire to connect. And whether that desire is motivated ultimately financially or, whatever, it has to be a true desire, meaning you have to want it. And it really has to extend beyond just the potential for a monetary benefit. And we can talk about more about that later, but what I say is it has to come from a really pure place. And so when you want to connect with somebody, as long as you come from a pure place, you can really connect with anybody. And then secondly, you have to focus and visualize. So stay with me here for a moment. And so when I started to experiment with just, connecting with people and making it like a 99.9% chance that I could connect with people, because look at, whether we're looking for a job or looking for clients, it has to be about the connection. And so what I started playing with is, okay, so my energy level, and I have this desire to connect with somebody. And so what I started doing was playing with the whole visual of, okay, I'm going to have a power cord plugged into me. And when I plug it into somebody else, I know it. And there's going to be this energy exchange. So much so, like, the conversation flows. How many of you have had, conversations where you're just so surprised that it flows effortlessly? You have a connection, you have so much in common. Ever have that? And many people think that it's something that you can't make happen. And I believe that if you follow some basic principles, you can almost all the time make that happen. And so when you have an energy cord that's plugged into you, a power cord, and you can plug it into somebody else, there is a bi-directional flow, and all these conversations and things can happen really effortlessly. The third step, I believe, is really about getting curious. And what I mean by that is, you've heard of, connecting with people. You want to be interested and interesting. And a lot of people really, they bypass the importance of getting curious about others. And that's really where you ask people, so what are you focused on right now? What great projects are you doing? Tell me more about what you like to do for fun, and find things to really get curious about, because when you do that, you pick up on little cues about who they are, what they like, and you learn more about them. And I also believe that when you do that, there's this sense of openness between, your brain and your heart and all of that. It's like you just open up, and that's where business happens. And maybe there wasn't an opportunity, but things just start opening up, and business can happen, connections can happen, hiring can happen. And it really comes from, a desire and getting curious. There's also this thing about a right brain connection. There's a lot of conversations about right brain, left brain, and And then there's people that say there's really no difference between right brain and left brain. And, whatever it is, there's a book that I read, and it talked about the whole right brain connection. And when you think about this, so this is where you're probably, you might even internally roll your eyes, but just, stay with me here. There's the thought that if you can touch somebody's right brain, and that's where the emotional connection is, that you can truly, truly connect with them. Okay, so imagine me experimenting with all these people, and the whole thought of a right brain connection comes from left eye to left eye. You with me? Okay, so when you focus on somebody's left eye, what's really happening is you're connecting with their right brain. Now, I believe when you're having an engineering discussion or something like that, you might want to focus on the right eye, but to tap into that relationship ability, you can focus on this right brain connection, left eye to left eye. And when you do that, and when you tap into that emotional center, suddenly people soften and they're open to connecting. They see good things in you, and it's like, I don't really, know why I like this person, but I really like this person. And then suddenly opportunities emerge from that. And then lastly, what I say is use discretion. And the reason that I say this is because we all know people who have energy that we don't want anything to do with. Do you all know somebody that you don't want any with their energy level? It's like they're negative or they're just nasty to be around. We all have that person, don't we? Right? Okay, imagine you don't want to use this. And if you possibly have to absorb their energy, you want nothing to do with that. So I add that in as a step because you want to be, discerning, and you want the good energy. You don't want the bad energy. However, I do believe that, if the person's not so dead set in their ways, you can shift their energy, and that's really fun to play with as well. But, there's some people that you might as well just run. But the people that you really want to create a connection with, it's playing with these things to get them to shift their energy and be more open to connecting with you. Okay, and here's a fun thing. I did this with a potential client, and I did it over the phone. And so imagine that. I mean, in person, it's much easier, but over the phone, you have no ability to look in somebody's eyes or even see that they're even paying attention to you. So I experimented with this, and I was able to create connections over the phone. So you can do it over the phone, whether you're interviewing, whether you're talking with an investor, no matter what, you can make great connections. And in that case, you really, have to focus. And when I say focus and visualize, it's like you can't multitask, because if your attention is going back and forth somewhere, the other person's going to know it. You may think you're doing a good job of just, shifting your attention somewhere else, but it's not true. People know. So this is my 5-step process, and we can talk about that more, but let's go on. Okay, and so virtually now we're mostly still in a virtual networking world. People are getting together in person, but most of the time we're still in this virtual world. And a lot of people have said that, creating networking opportunities is tough. Networking with individuals is tough. Meeting new people, you all used to do FANG meetings in person, right?
Yes.
And now you're not, at least for the time being. And so imagine you can't just walk up to somebody and shake their hand. And so you really have to look at creating those opportunities. So what I've done is just, provided you with some ideas. And so imagine this, and this is something that an individual who I know that was in transition actually did. They took a few people and they said, hey, let's have a wine tasting event. And if they want to sign up, then there's this, wine that you buy and it's delivered and then somebody takes it through. So it was a very low cost event, but they created a wine tasting event and their suggestion was invite somebody that you think might be a good connection for me and, or for somebody else. And so what happened was there were probably a dozen people on this wine tasting event. And people started making connections and they started getting curious about each other. And then they connected. They didn't necessarily have conversations during the event, but they followed up with people afterwards. And that's what's happening more and more. So there can be an online event, but look for people that might be, good people for you to connect with, or just people that you connect with. You don't know what you don't know about people, but connect and just see where the relationship goes. And there's, events that people have created just to discuss movies and Netflix series or whatever else. And then there's industry discussions. And you can create your own, you can, suggest that people get together, but that's another way to network in this virtual world. Many of you have heard of Lunch Club, right?
Yeah.
And has anybody ventured down the Lunch Club path? You have? Did you have a good experience with it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I did.
Had about 30 meetings and they've all been great, either professionally or just hobby wise, but absolutely.
Yeah, I was a little skeptical at first, and then I dove in, and what I found was it was a phenomenal way to connect with people that you don't know, and everyone that you connect with, they have at least 240 close connections, and whether it's LinkedIn, if they're in the business world, they have at least 240 connections, people that they worked with before, people that they, go to similar events with, people that they know in their, even in their personal life. And Lunch Club can be a really great place to meet people. And one key thing about, networking with people and getting to know them and having them get to know you and you getting to know them, it is really ask a key question. Once you get to know somebody and you say, who do you know that would be a good connection for me? And when you ask it in that way, it's not, do you know somebody? Because, the way the brain works, it's a fast yes or no. But when you ask, who do you know? Who do you know that could be a good connection for me? It's very seldom that somebody's going to decline you, especially after they've spent time with you. And then the other thing about meeting people are meeting now much more frequently, if it's especially in small groups or one-on-one. Now that places are open, as long as you have your vaccine card, you can meet somebody for coffee in San Francisco, right? Mm-hmm. And then the other thing about conversation starters, there's still a lot of people who, It's like, well, what do I have to offer? Why would somebody want to meet with me? It's really about getting curious and be interested in things, being interesting. And there's so much going on in the news right now. You can talk to anybody about anything. We just have to be careful what we say, but but really getting curious about somebody. I talked to a very new client today, and we immediately started talking about, well, my gosh, the vaccine mandates for companies, it's a really big deal. And you start, what's the company doing about that? And what are your thoughts on that? And you just ask questions, and it helps people lower their guard, right? And then another thing that I want to share is ways to get assistance from each other, from others. Now, I have a theory, right or wrong, that when you ask for help, because we're so inundated with things, we're overloaded, we're overtaxed. And if we ask for help, the first thing that our brains want to do is shut down. And you know why? Because we don't want another to do. How many of you feel that way?
Sure.
We don't want another to do. So when somebody asks for help, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't need another to do. Well, if you think about planting seeds rather than asking for help, it's more effective, and you're going to have a lot more success. And there's truly science behind it, by the way. There's a book called The Magic of Believing, and it's by Claude Bristol, and it's a very old book. So here's the story. When I worked for Disney, and I had just gotten a promotion, got this office with this big old bookcase in it, and it was empty. And I came in from a meeting one day, and there was this little book, and I think the book was originally written in the 40s, but it was this little book, and I think they called them pocket books, and paperback, and the size of a checkbook, really. And it was sitting on one of my shelves, and it was this Magic of Believing book. So it took me a while to, finally sit down and read it. But then I read it, and it talked about like what happens in somebody's brain when you plant a seed versus ask a question. And what it talked about was that if you mention something to somebody, our brains are wired to solve problems. And our brains are wired to help others, because that's a form of solving a problem, right? So imagine just saying to somebody, I'm looking for a new CFO role. And I've met interesting people along the way. Haven't landed anything yet, but boy, am I meeting some great people. So what have you done? You've just planted a seed with somebody. And guess what? You didn't ask them for anything. So they're not going to shut down, and they're not going to get all stressed out because yet they have another thing to do. You've just planted a seed, and they're just like, okay, so that person is looking for a job. And then imagine that just kind of stays in their brain for a while. And what happens is there could be a conversation, and somebody comes up and says, hey, I'm looking for a CFO, and the search isn't going that well, and all these recruiters, they're kind of hard to deal with, and dang, they're expensive. And then you think about this person who just planted a seed. Imagine that. Okay, then it's about keeping top of mind, and it's just keeping top of mind, not through mass emails. I am a believer that mass emails have nothing personal. There's no energetic connection that people have with mass emails. Would you agree with me? Imagine sending a personal note. So if I send a note and I want to keep on top, I want to keep top of mind with Rick. And I'm going to say, Rick, it was so great to speak at the Fang event. I enjoyed it. Just, think of me in the future. Would love to get together. Let's see how we can support each other. Imagine. It's nothing onerous, and it's something he's going to get out of it as much as I am, right? And he's going to think about me probably before he thinks about one of my competitors because of my approach. It's personal, it's caring, it's authentic. Because remember, I came from a really good place. My mind is right. My intentions are pure. And Rick's going to know, gosh, Christi's just a nice person. And that's how you want to be seen. You want people to see you as somebody that is a personal connector, not a great networker, a personal connection. And then I also want to remind people, you always, always, always want to see what you can give. Now, there's a way of doing that as well. So rather than say, hey, let me know what I can do for you. Okay, most people know. Is that really authentic? Probably not. You're just doing the dutiful, right? You're asking, well, let me know what I can do for you. But here's what happens when you listen. When you listen, you're listening for things. So I have this reel that I used to play in my head just to make sure that I'm focused. It's like, how can I help? How can I help? How can I help? Because, I'm meeting with a CFO in transition. And I know when that CFO lands, I want to do work with that CFO. I want to provide them with consultants and resources, right? And in order for me to have that ability to connect with them, it's like, I want to find a way to be helpful. So how can I help? How can I help? How can I help? And then what happens when you're focused on that? You're listening for little things. Maybe they talked about, this was an interesting one. Someone was talking about, gosh, I'm a bit distracted because the flooring guy just came in and, we can't save our floors. So now we have to get new floors. Okay. So I thought, wow, I just met somebody not too long ago. I wonder if this person can be helpful. So I said, just in case it's helpful, let me just send over the contact information for this flooring guy that I recently met. And I've heard some great things that he's done. Guess what? That was really helpful. Now, I don't know if that person even used them, but the fact that I thought of them, and I didn't dismiss what they were telling me. I thought of it. I heard it and I listened. And then I gave them that. And guess what? That there was that connection. If you think about connections being fibers, right? So maybe it's just a one fiber to one fiber connection, but the more things that happen, you build this fiber connection that is a lot more, it's a lot stronger than just this easy connection. It's deeper, it's stronger, it's much more meaningful. Does that resonate with anyone? Okay. And then, and I mentioned the go-giver. So, and I bring this up because when you think about interactions and ways to connect with people, these are the 5 laws of stratospheric success that Bob Berg and John David Mann came up with. And, all of it makes a lot of sense. The last one I really want to point out It's the law of receptivity. The key to effective giving is staying open to receiving. And that's one thing that a lot of us don't necessarily do, because we think, oh, you don't have to do that. Or, I don't want to ask for something. I don't want people to think I'm needy. But really, when you're open to receiving, it's amazing how much more of these laws come around for you. Okay. And lastly, it really starts with a relationship. Here's my contact information, and happy to I'll stop sharing. Happy to have conversations with you. And so let me know what resonated with you about what I shared. Anybody want to share?
Well, I'm curious about what one of the first slides had about being able to shift energy and how to make that happen.
Okay, so many of
Out of a
you.
bad mood and
Okay, and that's a great question, Rick. Thank you for asking. Think about many of you have heard of Amy Cuddy, right? She did the Superman pose, and it's really to empower women to be bolder and more confident. Anybody can do that, and that's one way. What I end up doing is I have my tools in my toolbox for energy. I listen to music, and it's upbeat music. Right now, I'm kind of on a country music kick. So what I'll do is I'll just blast the music, and I'll just get really excited about it. Some people, go for a brisk walk or go up and down the stairs, just something to get your energy going. And then the other thing is to smile, to just, look in a mirror and smile. And many studies have proven that if you just smile, the act of smiling affects your face muscles and it activates your brain. Bob Miller, it's good to see you. And so just smiling gets your energy up. And there was an executive coach, Vance Caesar, who when we first, so we've been doing boot camp for almost 14 years. And before we kind of got started, I was talking to him, and now remember, I started my company, the economy falls apart, and here I am trying to connect with people, and yes, there was a lot of fear, but I had to put blinders on the fear. And so I would just, he took me under his wing, and he would talk to me about, how do you stay in the right frame of mind? So his whole thing was, you're either in the green zone or the red zone. It's absolute. You can't be in the green zone and have one little toenail in the red zone, because it's absolute. And I said, okay, I get it. And I believe you, and I experienced that. But how do you get in the green zone? He said, you make a choice. You make a choice. You just step into the green zone. And he said, yes. And I said, so I went, I spent I had another meeting with him, and I said, okay, I've been practicing. It's not that easy. How do you just get into that zone? And he said, Christi, you just do it. You make a choice and you just do it. And I was frustrated. I just said, okay, how do you do it? You're driving along and you're in, you had this wonky interaction, and how do you get in the green zone? He said, okay, I have a mental image of my infant grandson, and he's smiling and he's pure. He's the sweetest thing. And that's how I do it. And I said, oh, so you can visualize something and just step into that. So you have to have those things ready for you to be able to step into it. If that's what it takes, have that image ready for you to step into, and you can do it. So whatever it is, to raise your energy level and to stay in the green zone, because remember, it's absolute. You have to be ready with those tools in your toolbox. Does that help, Rick?
Yeah, so if you feel you're in the red zone, you should not try to connect until you get yourself in the green.
Yes, I believe that. And because in my mind, and I can, once you practice this, and it can be immediate. Once you practice it, you can make it happen in the blink of an eye. It's fascinating. It's kind of like a muscle. Okay, I don't go to the gym, but what I can tell you is that I practice this all the time, and it used to be a lot more difficult. And there were days that it was like my mind I couldn't get in that green zone, and then I would end up canceling meetings, because it's like you do brand damage if you're not in that right frame of mind. And remember, energy is palpable. When people feel this slightly negative energy, they don't know that it's situational. They don't know that it's just, a temporary thing. In their mind, that's who you are. Right? So getting in that zone, that feeling of positive energy, that higher frequency, focus on, experiment with a bunch of different things and see what works for you. Who would have known that country music would have been my thing? But I never really liked country music, but suddenly it was like, oh, I kind of like it. So right now when I want to change my energy level, I'll just turn on that Pandora country music channel. And suddenly it's like, okay, I like that song. I skip the ones I don't like, but you just get in that feeling of positive energy. And it's like, oh, that worked. Okay. And here's another thought. Don't write an email when you're not in that positive, that higher frequency. Don't write an email. Don't write that thank you note for that interview. Don't write to that client. Stay away from any type of communication. Okay, so imagine, all right, I look at a ton of resumes. And so I could read a resume and really tell a lot about a person's mindset when I read it. So for the most part, all of you finance people are really pretty humble. So you don't know how to be overly boastful, but there are a few of you who have in the past. None of you here, though, that's for sure, but who might be a little overly boastful. And you can read that into the words. Now, what I like to tell people is that if you're a humble person, you can't possibly be overly boastful because it's not in your nature. And so with that, you want to pretend that you're writing it for somebody else, because then you can talk more authentically, because you guys are logical. All of you finance people, you really are more logic than a marketing person. Would you agree? Right. And so, it's like you're not going to write a resume or even update your resume if you're not at that higher frequency, because when you're at that higher frequency, you're going to write from a place of like pride, not overly boastful, but pride, true pride. It's like, wow, I'm so excited that I had done that. And these are my accomplishments that truly come from here. They don't come from here, they come from here, right? So don't write, don't talk to somebody, don't send an email when you are not in that positive energy, that higher frequency. because it will come across. Does that make sense? How many people think I'm a little nuts?
No,
Well,
no, I mean,
but
you've been
it's, people
successful
can,
for,
people can tell. So what other questions do you have?
I have one other one.
Okay.
And I go, this goes back to when you were starting your business in the recession of '08 to 10 or 11. And you talked about dealing with fear, the fear of your fear and others' fear. How did you know about the red and the green zone then, or did you just have to push through something? And how did
I
you
didn't
deal with
know
it?
about the red and the green zone so the story was, I started my company. I sold myself as a consultant to New Century Mortgage. They had just acquired a loan servicing company in Indiana. And a former colleague worked there and said, Christi, this integration is going horribly. Can you come on board and help me? And I said, well, I'm just starting my company. Can I do it under my company name? And she said, yes, absolutely. Just come. We need you. We got to get this going. Okay. So I was there for 4 months and we were talking about using all these consultants in the different areas. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. I'm an entrepreneur and I'm doing well. And look at it, this, my future is bright. And then 4 months later, there was a knock on my cubicle and said, Christi, there were all these executives that were in this meeting and suddenly the floor was dead. And they came and said, Christi, we love what you're doing and we know we want to pick it up, but right now there's a small issue that we have to get through and you're going to hear about it in the newspapers and blah, blah, blah. And then that was when the house of cards started falling, right? And so imagine, it was like, oh my gosh, what in the world did I get myself into? And, they had invoices that they hadn't paid. And I had hired people. I signed this 5-year office lease at a very elevated price. And it was like, holy moly, what am I going to do? Okay, so here's what I did. What I did was, and again, my 2 grandmothers in my ears, Christi, do good things for others and it will come back to you. Okay, so I had faith. I knew that it was going to happen. And I also knew that, business just doesn't evaporate. Very seldom does it, right? So logically, I knew that there was business to be had, but I had to get really creative about doing it. And I used to work for this company that I won't mention, but the CEO who, former Deloitte consultant or former Deloitte partner who started this company and who said, focus on the relationship, the business will come. And I thought, because I had worked for them for a couple of years and they turned practitioners, operational people into salespeople. And he just said, focus on the relationship, the business will come. So it's like, okay, I got to do a few things. Number one, I know that there's still business to be had. I just have to be creative. Secondly, I knew that, hey, you do great things for others and it'll come back to you. But here was my challenge. I had to focus on relationships for the business to come. And so I made an agreement with my husband. Number one, I took a look at the finances and said, okay, I have a runway. I always do worst case scenario planning. And somebody helped me with this. It's like, Christi, what's the worst thing that could happen? I have to sell the house and buy a little house on 5 acres in Podunk, Wyoming. I don't know. And then she asked me, is that so bad? And I said, you know what? It really isn't. I could probably do that. And so if you look at worst case scenario, and is that not so bad? Then really, what else is there? Okay, so if my business fails, I'll go back and get a corporate job and I'll work at Starbucks on the side and be a barista. Hey, people like coffee with a smile, right? So maybe I'll get tips. I don't know. That's the mindset that I had. And my husband and I had an agreement that, okay, here's the runway. We're going to have a go, no go decision within 9 months. But until then, You're not allowed to ask me how business is going. You're not allowed to be worried. I will manage money very carefully. And if the kids want that extra soccer uniform, well, maybe not. So that's what I did. And so I didn't just, dive in and said, no fear, no fear. I logically went through this. Worst case scenario, sell the house, 5 acres in Wyoming, happy for the rest of my life, right? Maybe. You start thinking about these things and you just go, you know what? At the end of the day, it's all about my mindset. And if my mindset, people won't want to meet me if I'm fearful. They don't want to meet with somebody that it's like, oh no, stay away from her. She's desperate for business, right? And you just do it. You know logically that there's a way out. And you're happy. And what ends up happening is energetically, you attract more people to you. And that's what happened. I had no idea that people were calling me a connector. I was just focusing on meeting people, focusing on helping people. I was getting introductions, drip, 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 business was coming in. And then, swirling, people were saying, you need to know Christi, you need to know Christi, you need to know Christi. And then it was like, wow, I had no idea what I was doing other than I was working my butt off and I was getting business in and I was meeting amazing people along the way. And I never felt negative. It was like, it was fueling me with positivity. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great story. Before we conclude, can you talk more about your Platinum Resource Group and December event?
Oh, sure. Okay, so Bob Miller has been through our boot camp, and so he might be able to share some. So I mentioned it at the beginning, and we put this together really because what we were seeing was that executives were really struggling with job search because those negative thoughts just get in your brain and it just swirls. And when you understand why it's happening, then you can step back and focus on, kind of distracting and diverting those, away from those negative thoughts. But so we really focus on bringing people together and talking about positivity in different ways. But it's really about helping people help each other, but staying positive and just feeding that, that positive mindset. So we talk about storytelling. How do you go into interviews or into a client meeting with, storytelling? And how do you, shift those negative voices? And how do you step into your most empowered self on demand? And when you look at that, when you practice these things, and we help people provide, build those tools, then there's a few things that happen. Number one, the cohort that you're with, because we limit it to 14 people. So the cohort that you with becomes your personal advisory committee. And people stay in contact for a really long time. And then you're part of a bigger community that you can tap into. We have a LinkedIn group. We have Friday morning coffee meetings with different speakers. And suddenly, things just kind of build on each other. And it's really a very beneficial way for people to, kind of get their positive energy going. Would you say that? Would you agree with that, Bob?
Absolutely. And I would also add that one of the things that I do is help people who are actively looking for are in transition themselves and actively looking. And as Christi know, I think we had probably 20 or 25 people of our group over time go through your group. And they all have gotten a tremendous amount from it. And starting with Irene Fung, who, by the way, just moved on to a permanent position. Which I'm excited about. So, but anyway, it's we think it's a must do for people in transition, quite frankly. Very effective. It's also very effective in sort of identifying what your brand is, what your strengths are, and being able to sort of use that strength to basically talk about yourself or understand what a good position for you. The other thing that I found it very helpful in is really identify what your professional purpose is. In other words, what your purpose, professional purpose that's bigger than you're making money and that type of thing. And you know, how does that really translate into the job that you should be looking for?
Really well said. I appreciate that. And one thing for you all to think about if you're in job search is, and Bob said it beautifully, is really focus on those things that brought you joy. So when you think about your accomplishments, if you pause and think about your accomplishments coming from here, not the greatest sounding accomplishments, but the ones that really got your juices flowing, the ones that got you out of bed in the morning and you lost track of time and you were just so thrilled about what you were doing and who you were working with and just, you know, learning new things, whatever it is, when you tap into that, it's amazing. When you tell a story in a situation, action, result format that comes from here, not from here, you come across in a different way. Your eyes sparkle, believe it or not. The tone of your skin is different. People listen to you in a very different way than when you're rattling on, trying to share with somebody that you did this great thing. I hope that helps. Has this been helpful?
Yeah. Thank you.
Definitely.
That's
Absolutely.
great, Christi. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm happy to send you the flyer and just reach out to me. Let's connect on LinkedIn if I can be of benefit to you at all, whether it's with connections. I'm happy to take a look at your resume, just have a conversation. You know, whatever it is, I'm happy to be helpful in any way. So reach out to me.
Thank you.